Dave Doyen, you're here in Toronto, and one can, because I look at this internationally, that what happens in one black country can one can extrapolate that it could happen anywhere else. Some of us were actually proud of the fact that someone of Vybz Kartel's statue was actually indicted in the first place and eventually sentenced in Jamaica, which, I'm from Nigeria originally, and I know that someone of that stature will not have been indicted in the first place. So that was that was kudos in a perverse way, but it was kudos to the Jamaican judiciary that they were able to withstand, the pressure of the adulation of the public for Vybz Kartel, and proceeded with going through finding justice for the family of the deceased. Now, you're a young man here in Toronto, Canada, in the Jamaican community here. How do you see it? Do you see it any differently from the people living in Jamaica, the way they see it?
For me, I mean, on the issue of whether or not he should be allowed to produce music, it's a legal one, and it's one that's easily resolved. Based on some of the reporting I saw from the Jamaica Observer, it's within the purview of the Department of Correctional Services to determine whether or not he can participate in the rehabilitation program. So if he is cleared and allowed to participate in the program, then he has all the right to produce the music. So that's on the legal side of things. I think it's, as you said at the start, there are different lenses through which we can look at this around the moral, ethical, and social side of doing so. So the legal requirement is met, right? They can choose to let him do that or not. On the social side of things now, it gets a little gray, and you have to look at that in so many different ways. Jamaica's history and present day reactions to classism, right? Because what you're pointing out is who gets a certain kind of treatment, who the justice system will treat a certain way, and who won't be treated a certain way, and who gets certain benefits and privileges. Would the same thing, would the same measures be meted out to somebody who's, let's say, a Bush League artist or not of Kartel's caliber, right? Would that happen? So it begs a lot of questions, and it 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 begs some understanding of who he is. And as Lloyd said, what, there's been this long discussion about dancehall, what dancehall does to Jamaican culture, if it's just a reflection of Jamaican culture, or is it a feedback loop? Does dancehall help to shape culture and culture shape dancehall, or is dancehall simply a reflection? So all of those things need to be broken down, and I think we can start to understand the issue a little bit more.
That's
Very much agree with you, Doc.
very, very uh, profound way to put it. Um, Lloyd, you want to say something?
I agree with him. I agree with Dave 110%. We have so many gray areas when it comes to cartel that and this discussion that we have to look. But I want to take it a little higher than that. We have a society that calls our prime minister bro God. Bro God is a term that comes out of the root of crime in Jamaica. It's a kingpin name. So if we are living in a society that is going to reflect our prime minister, leader of our country, as a crime kingpin, then it's a reflection of our society. So everything else that you see is just a dust off of the decay. And I'm sure Gramps would agree with me on this. It cannot be here discussing or anywhere else as a platform, and we're discussing what Vybz Kartel, when we have the prime minister that we're calling bro God. So that there's something very wrong in the framework of the Jamaican society. Not just musically, not just, our moral and ethical guidelines as a society. And there are things that are happening here in Jamaica that go against the grain of, because there are rules in our society, and there are certain things that are going against the grain. So if we even going to start the discussion on why Vybz Kartel is being allowed to this, we need to go and look now on why our society has allowed lawlessness to become so rampant and so deep in society.
Grams, as when one looks at your discography, your musical choices, one can say it's very cultural, very positive, and even though you've dabbled, as you said, in dancehall, um, can one rightly ascribe the negativity in the society to a particular genre of music? Is that something that is that something that is justified?
That would totally be unfair and unfit, because what we cannot do is pick on dancehall, and I will not allow that as a reggae artist, because music is a reflection of society. It is a reflection of people. But they don't say the same thing about hip hop. Still, yet hip hop has grown to a point of where it has become pop culture. There was one time that pop artists were bigger than hip hop artists. Rock and roll artists were bigger than hip hop artists. But now you find that black music and hip hop has become pop culture, right? No, when it comes to Jamaica, no, my brother Floyd said it best. When you see we live in a society where we are referring to the leader of the country as Brogard, I think Jamaica is just very unique in this factor, because there are a lot of things that needs to change. But I wouldn't say that dancehall music is a reflection of the negativity. That's where it has found its place for expression, right? But it's not totally, because when you take a stop and look at the history and look at music, Yellow Man used to talk enough slack lyrics. It wasn't gun lyrics and these type of lyrics existed before. But it has gone to a point now where it has become a way of life, which we have to get under control, and the government has to get under control, because Shabba Ranks, they do all kind of lyrics and suggestive lyrics. So we don't want to jump on dancehall, because dancehall does have positive lyrics in them. You talk about artists like Agent Saska, you talk about certain artists, I can go on and on. So there are reflections of positivity in dancehall music. So it's not just a plain reflection of the negativity of a Vybz Kartel or just dancehall music. Like Brother Leng said, it's a reflection on our society that we're still growing.
Robert, if you'll allow me to jump in there, because I want to pick up on two other things Gramson Lloyd pointed to. But before I do that, one of the things I should have mentioned earlier too, even from a legal side of things, we have to make a distinction between music that Vybz Kartel may be releasing while he's incarcerated, and then the trove of music that was already recorded before he was incarcerated. If you listen to his interview with Winford Williams, I think it was his last one for On Stage, he was saying that he would be in his studio and producing 2 to 3 songs a day. So if he's producing 2 to 3 songs a day, that's a massive cache of music that can be released at any time. In terms of what is being released while he's behind bars, or what is being produced from behind bars, we may never know. That's on the DCS, the Department of Correctional Services, to do their investigation and and resolve those issues. But I think we have to be careful with what is or may be produced or possibly is being produced from behind bars, and what already exists before his incarceration. To this notion about how we refer to the Prime Minister as Bro God, I even had to take a little bit of a look at Vybz Kartel as well, because it's this persona. And if you break down the name Vybz Kartel, in Jamaica, when you talk about vibes is something positive. Mind you, vibes can be bad too. You have people with bad vibes and you have people with good vibes. But vibes in the sense of music tends to be something positive. When you talk about cartel, probably the most immediate association is going to be, let's say, a drug cartel or a gun cartel. So you even get this oxymoron in a person, right? This almost Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing going on. And you see that in the kind of lyricist he is, he will have a song like Ramping Shop, and you look at all the lecherous and libidinous lyrics in that, all prurient. And then you get a song that talk about, the social condition that Jamaican people are living through. Like when you say, men might think they're better off in the grave, right? The emergency people are suffering around here. And then you might have something just as neutral with good vibes, such as Summertime in a Portmore. So this guy is able to run a spectrum of lyrics. And as my fellow colleagues pointed out, you know, in some ways it's going against the grain and in some ways it's not. And again, we have to do this in the context of Jamaica too. Jamaica, you know, coming back from colonial time, and it still is today, a very Christian conservative country. So, you know, if you're a church-going person, we probably were all raised as church-going people, you know, you had to be in Sunday school and all of these things. So, you know, church people don't want any association with dancehall or any crass or lewd lyrics. Mind you, a lot of people, you know, after church, these are the things that they're dancing and jiving to. And it would be unfair, as Graham said, to make dancehall a scapegoat, because guess what? We would need to shine a spotlight on soca and calypso. All of them are talking about sex. It's just that it was a little bit more coded. Now, this evolution in dancehall just put it out there explicit. White liver Indian, want to take away virginity, all of these things which run counter to Christian principles, right? Of no sex before marriage, no fornication. Yet the people are doing it, right? Like it's going out of style. So there's so much to look at and process in this thing about him, because this is a man, he's as controversial and as consequential as Donald Trump. People who will run up to the red line and may never cross it until they once did, like Donald Trump. And, you know, the charges, right? He's been impeached for sedition and causing the insurrection at the Capitol. And I mean, look at the throngs of people that came to Justice Square, as it's called, downtown Kingston, outside the Supreme Court, when the conviction was being handed down to the judgment in 2014, and then recently for the appeal.
And that is actually the concern, is that this gentleman has so much influence. The genre that he's part of is very influential. So from my perspective, one is looking at how is that influence, how does that affect the youth in terms of what they see as things that they can emulate. You cannot deny the fact that dancehall and the dancehall culture is very influential in the lives of our youth. Here in Toronto, we see the same kind of problems with people taking sides. You know, I hear of Gaza and I'm sorry, what's the other? There's another group.
Gaza and Gully.
And Gully and all that. And we have that replicated here. And I think it's because of the influence of this musical genre. We cannot deny that. Now, and another thing is that that's something that I researched.
But I would stop you there for a second. I would say yes, we can deny that, and we can deny it emphatically, because at the end of the day, if hip hop was coming out, if you never heard dancehall at all in Canada, and hip hop was the influential thing, and it was because of for example, hip hop was the most influential thing in Canada, not dancehall. Then you guys would be up there probably, you know, having the Crips and the Bloods without having the Gaza and the Gully, you know. So you can't really look on the Jamaican influence and say, oh, it is because of this. Because at the end of the day, I've been listening to dancehall music from the 80s. I'm sure Dave loving Vybz Kartel as I do, but I'm not getting up and going out there and killing people, because our parental structure and who we grow at home, and our parents treated us as children and not pets. And when you grow in a society where a lot of the parents are treating their children as pets, leaving their TVs to be their babysitters, leaving them at school for extra class to avoid parenting, then you end up a society where children have to look to people like Vybz Kartel as their role models because the parents aren't doing it. Don't blame the music.
No, definitely, and that is not what I am alluding to in any way, shape, or form. It's just that the present reality is that, you know, there are families that are not exactly model families, and unfortunately, our young, especially male, are not being properly supervised. So you cannot, I don't think that, whereas one cannot blame a musical genre for the failings of black youth, but we cannot deny the influence that it has. I'm hoping that is something that we can agree on.
In the home, because his parents, Gramps Morgan, his father is known for the bevy of children, almost a catalog of children. He could have 3 or 4 football teams. And I'm sure, you know, he had different mothers and all sort of thing, but they all grew up under construct. I grew up in a single parent home. My father died from very early. And at the end of the day, that is no excuse. The parenting and social positioning of moral and ethics starts in the home. And if the parents are not doing it, there is not a father or an uncle there for them to be an example to the boys. And you're in a society, after 13-year-old, you know, a mother cannot raise a boy. He needs to have some sort of male character so he can reflect. And if that's going to be Vybz Kartel, if that's going to be Biggie Smalls, if that's going to be Tupac Shakur, or Bob Marley, or Gramps Morgan, or Denroy Morgan, that essence of how they pick it is dependent on how they were grown up. Because that's what they listen to. If the parents are listening to Vybz Kartel, then he's going to turn to Vybz Kartel, and if his parent mother rate Vybz Kartel and then starts doing all part of shaking our booty in the kitchen every day. When he reach 13, he's going to see Vybz Kartel as the man who then start calling Dada. You understand what I'm saying? And reflect everything with Vybz Kartel, tattoo, bleach up, and all of these things. Because that is his male role model. And when we start seeing these problems, we're not seeing these problems to the 8-year-old or 9-year-old or 10-year-old gentlemen. We're seeing it when it reaches 13, when they need to have a strong male role model in their life. And we're not doing that, and dancehall can't do it for them, hip-hop can't do it for them, music can't do it for them. The parents need to do it. So for us to look and even try to say, even on a slight or a subliminal, it is not the music's fault. And we need as a diaspora to stop trying to find and externalize the problems that start at home.